This month's theme, as you know, is the art of, and today's topic is the artist's way. Interesting title for a book, don't you think? Especially if you are an artist in some form of creative expression. And interesting title, don't you think, if artistic is not in your vocabulary or in the tools in your workroom. In either case, stay with me. I believe you are in for a pleasant surprise. The Artist's Way is the story of a woman who followed a spiritual path to higher creativity. And though the title sounds like it has to do with people who paint or sculpt, who draw or design, who craft or record, what it is about is the basic creativity within all people and the myriad of ways that is expressed by humanity. And that creativity is as inherent in a child building a Lego castle as in a senior citizen making face masks for us these days, and everything in between. I remember watching a well-known kapuna in Waimea craft a lehulu, which is a band, for my papale, which is my lahala hat. Feather by feather, patiently matching each one in color, pattern, and size. To me, it was a marvelous work of art. To her, it was a loving pastime. She talked more about her son, who had harvested those feathers, and his daughter, her granddaughter, while her fingers flew over the plastic boxes of feathers, selecting one by one and matching them in such beautiful array. Not that she wasn't immersed in the creation that she was building, it was inherent in her, and she had done it a myriad of times. Like a mother makes her children's favorite cookies, or a dad spends the day at the beach coaching his kids riding stand-up paddleboards. Do they see themselves as creative artists, expected to be lauded over and thinking they are famous for what they're doing? That's unlikely. They're just doing what they love to do and sharing it with others who also get to enjoy it. So these are some of the ways that artistic creativity shows up in a myriad of ways in all walks of life, skills, and interests. Julia Cameron, author of the book The Artist's Way, through her own experiences and those of countless others who she has shares with us that creativity is our true nature, and that any blocks we may have to that are an unnatural thwarting of a process which is naturally as normal and as miraculous as the blossoming of a flower at the end of a leaf-laden stem. And she believes that expressing the true nature of the human, the flower, or any other living thing is a simple and straightforward process for making spiritual contact. Isn't that interesting? I just found that fascinating. In short, she writes, what you are doing is you're creating pathways in your consciousness through which the creative forces can operate. Once you agree to clearing those pathways, your creativity emerges. So it's an integral part of the spiritual being that we are having a human experience. And easy peasy, what is spiritual about it is that we are opening to the creative mind of our source of being and inviting it to express by means of us. It's not something we have to invent. It's a part of the spiritual package we arrive here on planet Earth with. Julia also has a concept about spirituality she calls spiritual electricity. Never heard that phrase before either. And she says, what I'm talking about here is an invited spiritual experience. In fact, she calls it spiritual chiropractic. She explains, we undertake certain spiritual exercises to achieve alignment with the creative energy of the universe. Don't you just love that? I mean, it's an exercise. It's a routine. It's a crafted experience you design for yourself. Just as an aside, and some of you will recognize this story. In our morning spiritual practice on Zoom, we have one person who does a computer yoga program while simultaneously doing our spiritual practice on Zoom. Awesome, that's a double advantage. That is so creative. And they both support this person's spiritual practice. Getting back to spiritual electricity and its basic principles, Julia suggests that we think of the universe as a vast electrical sea in which we are immersed, from which we are formed. And opening to our creativity changes us from just something bobbing around in that sea to a more fully functioning, more conscious, more cooperative part of that whole ecosystem. The spiritual electricity she refers to is what she calls the presence of something transcendent, meaning moving beyond our own so-called limitations and actually identifying the source of our creativity is what we already know as our source of being. And she suggests that we might also choose to call that forging a creative alliance, artist to artist, with the great creator. Great and creator capitalized, so you know who that is. Accepting this concept can greatly expand our creative actions. And this author, this creative writer that Julia Cameron is, puts it this way. Creativity is an experience. And to my eye, she writes, a spiritual experience. It really doesn't matter which way you think of it, creativity leading to spirituality or spirituality leading to creativity. Because she says, like Carl Jung answered the question of belief late in his life, I don't just believe, I know. Here's another quote from Carl Jung, appropriate to today's concept of the art of creativity. The creation of something new is not accomplished by the intellect, but by the play instinct acting from inner necessity. The play instinct. The creative mind plays with the objects it loves. I gave that quote a lot of thought before I continued framing this talk, because it brings up or brings out the concept of the inner child within each one of us. And it frames that with the realization that there are young ideas and young creativity in us, which are neither immature nor childish. We're fully immersed in a life-changing series of events right now, aren't we? With opinions that are swirling around all the way from this will set the human race back hundreds of thousands of years to in progress. Or the opinions that this changes everything, and what we're doing now is the new norm. Or opinions like this is a whole new way of living, and it's going to emerge like this has never been seen before, experienced, or tested. So yes, there is reason to contemplate how to proceed from here, individually and collectively. Personally, I see this as an opportunity to contribute to raising the collective consciousness of this planet with fresh ideas, with expanding the levels of kindness and support that many people around the world are demonstrating right here, right now, and courting a deepening realization that we are all in this together, not just for today, not just for next month, not just the rest of this year, but we are all in this together, period. So perhaps this is the moment when we lovingly release some of our older, or what we might refer to as our mature ideas, and begin to draw new boundaries, stake out new territories for personal choices, desires, and interests. Perhaps this is the moment we refine ourselves and take advantage of that inert creativity within us. Perhaps this is the moment when we revisit the joys of young and enthusiastic ideas that we bring into this now moment. It's fascinating to me that Julia has a chapter in her book titled Recovering a Sense of Identity, which she believes unfolds when we begin to utilize our creativity in an enthusiastic manner. If ever this was germane to humankind, this time in history is certainly that. So we begin by nurturing ourselves, because nurturing our creativity lies in nurturing ourselves first. And when we nurture ourselves, we nurture our inner connection with the great Creator, God. Because life is what we make of it. So whether we conceive of an inner God force or an other outer force pressed upon us, that's what becomes our power source. I'm sharing these thoughts with you, not because I think any of you are grappling with being impacted by outside sources of power, but because we must occasionally be reminded of and remind ourselves that those around us may be pressured from those outside sources of power. Julia quotes Carl Jung frequently, as do those of us teaching certain aspects of metaphysics. And one of the areas she addresses in her book is that of synchronicity, what Jung referred to as a fortuitous intermeshing of events. Synchronicity. For someone on the spiritual path, if you look it up in the dictionary, you will find it defined as that moment in the fabric of time when we suddenly and briefly become consciously aware that we have made a deeper connection with the universe, or that which is greater than our individual self. Well, that can happen to anyone, anytime, anywhere. That's not in question. Does it happen, and to whom, and with what impetus, what motivation or momentum are the questions to be addressed? And it causes me to reiterate what I said at the top of this talk. The basic creativity within all people and the myriad of ways that is expressed by humanity in all walks of life, skills, and interests is behind the motivation, the momentum, the impetus, and to whom and when it happens. I also believe that most of us on the spiritual path of partnering with our source of being believe that we bring positive, creative ways of serving and enhancing life on this planet we call home, and that we can and must activate our access to got me. To that stuff I talked about a minute ago. Synchronicity. In upping the collective consciousness. This next week in our daily morning practice on Zoom, we're going to be addressing abundance and its myriad ways of demonstrating. As I developed this talk for you this week, I realized it's also time to address upping the collective consciousness. So the following week, on our Monday through Friday sessions on Zoom, we'll be focusing on that very thing, putting our synchronicity thoughts, ideas, and actions into the collective consciousness with clarity, focus, ease, and grace. And because the art of creativity lies within each one of you, your presence and your participation there would be a powerful expansion of those meetings. And you might hear something that grows your consciousness if you listen for it. And so it is.